Hello? All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. I know we're starting about 10 after, a little late, but we wanted to make sure everybody had a chance to get in. So thank you all for coming. Mike's going to start us off in prayer, and then he's got an announcement to make. So we will get started. Everybody bow your heads.
Okay, let's pray. Dear Heavenly Father, Father God, Abba, Father, Daddy, Lord, thank you. Thank you for your Son coming and paying a price that we couldn't pay. Our faith is in that and that alone, Lord, as we go before you right now and realize this is a blessing. As brothers and sisters coming together for freedom, Lord, that's you word, liberty, a word that you created. So, Lord, I pray this evening that we'd honor and glorify you in our speech too, Lord. We wouldn't tear people down, but we would lift each other up for your freedom that you gave us, Lord. So, Lord, I pray that we would honor you tonight. Lord, I pray for Robb as he speaks, Lord, and for everyone in here, Lord, that you be honored. This is all about you, Lord, and I pray for that in Jesus' name. Amen. Okay, I got a quick announcement. I don't know if you guys know it, but Tim Brinker has stepped down as commissioner. I'm not really upset about it. I'm just going to let you know right now, okay? So you can get my own opinion later because I want to honor and glorify God while I speak tonight. So I've talked to Paul Oversmith and Ken Cox, who are the other commissioners, doing a great job, very conservative. I know them both very well. But the governor's going to appoint someone. And Kehoe is friends with Tim Brinker. So I'm just going to tell you, I have another opinion about Kehoe too, but I'm going to leave that on the side right now too. But we can pressure them right now because I do not want shots being appointed because Tim's friends with him and Kehoe. We have to get, Tim, will you stand up? This man right here, Tim Baker, we need to call the governor. We need to call the governor and tell him to give Tim the placement for that commissioner. You've got to get a hold of the governor. If we swamp that, he has no choice but to listen to the people. This is a God-fearing man that's doing a great job in service of us right now as a county clerk. He's a personal friend, guys. You can trust me. If you trust me, you can trust this guy right here. He's amazing. Okay, we got that homework done. Right now, this guy right here, what's your name? Bob, Brother Bob here. He wants to do a documentary, and he wants to take pictures. Is there anybody that doesn't want their picture taken a part of what We the Free People and what Rob's going to be talking about tonight about our freedoms? Does anybody have a problem with that? Do you have a problem with that? Okay.
There is somebody that wants to do a documentary on this movement that we're having, whether it will come to fruition or not. They've talked to me about it, and I said, I'll get some pictures. I'll have, like everybody, just take videos and stuff when we're out, and we'll see where that goes or not. You never know, because it needs funding, and I'm not funding it.
So we have two people that don't want their picture taken. Is that correct? So then I guess we're not going to take pictures for the documentary tonight, okay? Because I'm not going to go against their will of getting their picture taken in my restaurant and end up getting sued, okay? I understand that. I wish we would, bud. I would. If we're going to stand up for freedom, that shouldn't bother us. But I respect your opinion and what you guys want. So God be the glory for that. Thank you, Brother Bob. Okay, I'm going to give it back to you, and I'm going to go back to work.
So really quick, the email that I want you guys to send your emails to in support of Tim Baker. So you already have a pen, your phone. Well, I'll give it out later again too, so don't worry, or I'll put it on our Facebook and stuff. But it's Kerry, K-E-R-I .Stewart, S-T-U-A-R-T at, okay, so Kerry, K-E-R-I dot Stewart, STUART, at GOVERN, governor, GOVERNOR, governor.mo.gov. So Carrie.Stewart at governor.mo.gov. So send your messages. And then I told Tim, if you guys have a couple, Tim, do you want to come up just to maybe answer a couple questions real quick? Yeah. Does anybody have any questions? We'll just let Tim, about 5 minutes. Yeah, I'll put that in an email too. Yeah, hang on just a second. So we're going to bring Tim Baker up.
Listen to you all the time. Thank you. Yeah. I've been on Dan and Drew quite a bit. So. I remember. Yeah. All right. So for those that may not know me, my name is Tim Baker. I'm your current county clerk. I've been there for 6 years. Whenever I came into office, there was a lot of wasteful spending. Since I've been there, I've saved the taxpayers of I've saved the taxpayers of Franklin County over $700,000 by taking care of wasteful spending from my background in manufacturing. And I would do the same thing because the county itself has a lot of issues. We are in debt, $30 million. There is no way to pay that back with the way that they've used the money for that in our current commission. And where our insurance is out of line, there's a lot of stuff that could be saved right off the top. The two commissioners that we have there right now are doing very good, but they're green. They're both freshmen, and I have 6 years of experience, and I've seen the inner workings of county government. Just a little bit of background on me on that as well. I ran for commissioner for 3 times and lost. And I was going to run for a 4th time, and as the old saying goes, you want to make God laugh, tell him your plan, right? Because my wife told me not to run for commissioner again. And somebody asked me to run for county clerk. I ran for county clerk, and since I've been there, I've brought our elections back up to where I feel like they're very secure. There's several of my judges in here that will testify to the changes that we've made on that. And we just had a security audit that was done a month ago, and we are actually, the guy when he left, I won't use the exact word that he said, but he said Franklin County is pretty secure, and he used the F word, I will tell you that. They were very impressed with what we do for Franklin County, and we've been a model for other counties on how we run our elections. So I'll be taking that same experience with me to the commission if the governor appoints me for that. I'd be happy to answer any questions if anybody has anything. I am an open book. One of the things real quick that I would tell you that I would bring back that has been gone since Ed Hillhouse is public comments. Nothing irritates me more than when a citizen does not have the right to come up and talk on any opinion that's not on. Right now, you can come up and talk for 3 minutes if it's on the commission orders. We work for you, not the other way around. And if you have a complaint, you should be allowed to talk about that publicly. And the reason they do that is because they don't want it in the paper. And if we're doing something wrong, you're supposed to keep us accountable for it. And that's why, I believe in good government. That's all I want is good government. That's all I've ever wanted since I've been in office. And I would continue to do that if I'm appointed. And then I would run again in 4 years, or for 2 years for the position again. So, yes.
I know when I voted, I saw a sign about the senior tax freeze coming up in March. What's going on with that?
So I wish I had a good answer for you on that. One of the problems that we have in our commission currently is no communication. My official title is county clerk to the commission, and I have no idea what they're doing because they don't ever talk to us. I find out information in the paper just like you do, and so does every other elected official, and that would stop if I'm in office. Because when you ask me questions like that, I should be able to answer them, and I can't because I don't have enough information. Yes?
When you guys decide to have commissioner meetings, will they be held in the middle of the day when nobody can attend, or will you end up having them in the evening time when everybody could attend?
That's another pet peeve of mine. I would rotate them around. I think that it's important that we go to other communities as well. Each city has a city hall that we could host an evening meeting. Again, you have the right to come out and talk to us, petition your government, if you will. And we're not allowing that to happen. And no, not every meeting would be held at night, but I guarantee you I would definitely move at least 1 or 2 to the evening so citizens would have the right to come out when they're off work. Yes?
What has been your position on paper ballots in Hampton County, and what's the most recent purchase of voting machines with our
Sure.
deficit problem?
So 2 years ago, I bought new Unison machines. They are tabulators. I've made a clear statement when I ran for lieutenant governor as well. I ran for lieutenant governor in the last primary and was unsuccessful. I do not like the Dominion machines. I do not like any machine that you go up and push. We have a paper ballot that we hand you. And like I said, I have plenty of election judges here. Everything we do is open and transparent. That ballot then goes through a tabulator. At the end of the night, we take that data from the TMs and upload them. That's the only time anything is done online. After that, we are required by law to do 5% of our precincts as a hand count audit on a random draw and a random issue on the ballot that we have to hand count. In our county, that's 3 precincts. Since I've been in office, we've done anywhere from 5 to 10 precincts to make sure that they're done. That is all open to the public, and they come to that. I'm very confident in my system with the tabulators. And when that hand count matches what the tape says, I'm hard-pressed to tell you that you're not going to convince me that what we do is not accurate. And again, I have several judges in here, and if I'm wrong, please call me out. Everything we've done is open and honest to the public. And Missouri does have a paper ballot, and I am dead set on 2 things. One, only citizens should vote, and I was glad that amendment passed this year. One of our biggest issues is our voter rolls, and I've not been shy about this either. We are the end user on the voter rolls as far as the data that we get. If the DMV would quit clicking yes when you walk in there and say, are you registered to vote, that would help us. If the Social Security office would quit giving out Social Security numbers to everybody and their brother, that would help. We have to do what the law says, and the law says that if the DMV number matches or their Social Security number matches, we have to allow them to vote. That's what the law is. We're kind of like that gas station attendant that everybody goes in and yells at when the fuel goes up and there ain't nothing they can do about it. We need help, and I'm hoping that Denny Hoskins, our new Secretary of State, will help fix our voter rolls.
We have time for one more question. We've got a hand up in the back.
Yes.
2 parts, if I could. The audit that you referenced to before, is that the cybersecurity audit that was instituted in 2022?
Yes, by the current governor, or the current Secretary of State, Jay Ashcroft. It's from a company called Apollo. Apollo? Yes.
And that's the one that the Secretary of State's office recommended?
Yes.
Are you publishing the results of that audit?
We cannot. That is actually secure under the not cybersecurity, over the national. Yeah, we're not allowed to give you that information now, which is really kind of odd because if you want to follow me on election day, I would be happy to. Well, if I become presiding, you wouldn't be able to, but I've opened up to anybody that wants to follow me around on election day, wants to see anything. Tammy was in our office, her and her husband both were in our office at the last meeting, or the last on election night on November, and saw our process. Yeah, but we're not allowed to. Those are unsunshine requestable, and I'm taking up Rob's time. I'm sorry, sir.
That's not in the statute. In the bill 1878, there's nothing written in there about whether the information could be released or not. I think that's
I would have to double check on that.
directive coming from SOS.
But I can tell you that for all the protocols that we do, I'd be hard pressed on anybody that does them better than we do.
One other thing about the Unison machines.
Hmm.
Do you know that Unison is owned by a company called ILTS?
I'm not completely familiar with who all owns all of them, but Unison is the company that we've used for over 20 years, and I'm very happy with it. Again, when our paper, when the receipt comes out, like you do an end of the night tally at any register, when that tape comes out and that tape matches what we have in the box, it's kind of hard. You're not going to convince me any otherwise that it's not accurate. And this is all done in bipartisan teams when they count these things. Open to the public. I have never turned anybody down to come into my office. And in fact, Tammy will tell you that her and I argued more than once on election night, but I never shied away from any question you had, did I?
Well, I'd like to come in sometime.
Sure. Yeah.
ILTS stands for International Lottery and Totalizator Systems, which is also a wholly owned subsidiary of a company called Berjaya, Berjaya, which is based in Malaysia.
Okay, we're going to need to move. Sorry, I just this is so
Yeah.
interesting, but we're going to need to move on just because I don't want to cut into Rob's time too much. So again, we want to contact the governor. I'll give that email out a little later. So thank you, Tim, for coming in. So I want to ask by a show of hands, how many here are familiar with Robb Carter and listen to the show regularly? Just by show of hands so he has an idea. A lot of people. How many folks, by a show of hands, is this your first time hearing from Robb? So there's a good number. Okay. So I wanted to do that, and then I'm going to let Robb kind of give his history and a little background based on that. But without further ado, we don't want to take up any more time. Huh? Oh, yeah. Thank you.
I got your.
Yeah, you got my back. Okay. I forgot about that. Yeah, we want to do the national anthem. So everybody stand up.
So how many of you have ever heard Robb a cappella the national anthem? Who wants to? I'll give you the first 2 or so notes as badly or as best I can, and then we'll go with it as a group. Oh, say.
If I talk like this, will everybody be able to hear me? I'm not a big fan of the microphone because I talk loud to begin. First of all, I cannot believe how many people say listen to my show. Kevin, gosh, I'm already just killing my buddy Edward Jones. Okay, I haven't eaten. I just so I'm a little just to begin. Go ahead.
Work. Unfortunately,
We're going to try it this way then. I'm just a North County kid. I grew up over by Rittner High School, Pattonville High School. That's where I grew up. Never really had a lot of interest. And by the way, I'll start by saying I have zero interest in being an elected official. Not at all. I want to be where the power is at. The power is with us. And what I talk about on my show is that we've kind of given our power away to the politicians, and we're always asking them to do this and asking them to do that. So we'll talk about what I'm trying to get accomplished here in just a bit. But the way this all started was I happened to be in China when COVID started. I was over there in the shoe business. All of your shoes are built in China. I mean, 90% of the shoe business comes from China. I worked at a company called Skechers. I worked at a company called Cole Haan Shoes, if you know them. Worked for Clark's, if you know who those companies are. And I worked in Boston and California, New York for all these different companies. And when you build shoes, you go over to China and you tour their factories and you determine which factories you're going to use to build your shoes. Well, I happened to be over there when COVID began. And when you fly out of China, you fly into Hong Kong. I fly into Hong Kong, and I'm sitting down, and I'm watching the monitors up front, and I see people start to walk, and they're collapsing down onto the ground. They're walking, and they're collapsing down onto I couldn't hear anything, but I'm just looking at them and go, what is that? Because it was CNN International, but it was American speakers. You could see they were Americans that were talking. That would have been October the 12th of 2019. Okay? So I get home. My wedding was October 19th. That's why the dates are so easy for me to remember. And I got home and I started seeing the COVID rollout. I started to see it, and I am somebody who studies what I'm interested in. Many of you will have degrees and college degrees. I never cared at all about any of that. I cared about learning what I was interested in, which was media. I loved media when I was a kid. I was a big Jack Buck fan. I used to listen to the Cardinals game, and I would watch the game on TV and talk into the radio and do the broadcasting. So I wanted to get into broadcasting. That was my first love, and journalism. I loved journalism. I thought I'd be in broadcast journalism when I was in high school. That's where I thought I would go in life. I went to the broadcast center. They told me when I got out of there, you can go to Nebraska, Iowa. You're going to make somewhere between $14,000 and $16,000. I had a child on the way. I was 21 years old, and $14,000 to $16,000 raising a child, and we didn't come for money. That wasn't going to work. Okay, so I have that background. I have a background in journalism. I have a background in media. I have a background in studying propaganda. I read all the books on Bernays. So I had a sense of the propaganda that was coming. And I started telling people in my life, I said, hey, they're going to come with there's going to be some virus thing coming here. I told them what I had saw in China, and my friends and family were like, Robb's smoking something. Robb's smoking something. He's losing his mind. He doesn't seem like he's acting properly anymore. I think he's losing his mind. And this kind of, I'm not kidding when I say that. I'm not joking around. My friends and family thought I had lost my marbles. I said, it's coming. And then when it started to come, I started telling them what I thought was going to happen. And I told them that because there was a document released in 2010 by the Rockefeller Foundation called Lockstep. Lockstep was what you could do on the back of a pandemic. Talked about closing borders, and it talked about consolidating business. I love small business. That's why I get choked up with these guys being in here. Because without them, I couldn't do it. So Kevin, Everett, I apologize every time I just get choked up over it. But they supported me from the get-go. Started to build a conversation with everybody. And I started using the radio to use my background in journalism and broadcasting to ask questions. Grassroots people from around the state started hearing me talk about national news. I didn't really understand state politics at the time. I was more focused on the shiny ball up in DC, and I was concerned about the Clintons, the Obamas. When Trump announced he was running for president, the first day when he came down the elevator and said, I'm running for president, as soon as they opened up the office, it was right on off of 70 out in Lake St. Louis, I went and signed up for the Trump campaign. And I began paying attention to national politics very heavily. When I got on the radio, I was really talking about national politics. And then all of these emails and phone messages and everything started to come in from grassroots from around the state. And they said, Robb, you should pay attention to what's going on in Missouri. This is a rigged system. There's something not right about what's going on here. We have a supermajority of Republicans, but we continue to get liberal legislation out of Jefferson City. And I said, okay, let me start to study this. And my nature is to be incredibly compulsive. When I'm into something, I am like a dog on a bone. My brain itches. I can't sleep. I'm just locked on it. So I started going around, paying attention to what people were telling me, and then applying just journalism tactics to try to figure out who was telling me the truth and who wasn't. If you haven't been around politics long enough to know, it's a tricky game. It's a sleazy, slimy, tricky game. And I recognize that because it's very similar to what happens in the corporate world. If you are in a big company, $1 billion, Skechers is a $9 billion company. When you're in a company like that, everybody's trying to step on your head to get one rung up the ladder. It's no different in politics to me. It's the same kind of people gravitate toward the top, if you ask me. People that I generally don't like, I'll be honest with you. I could not make my way to the top of these I was always an executive vice president of Cole Haan, an executive vice president at Prevo and Clark's and Earth and all these companies. And I couldn't get to the top because I just didn't have the heart to destroy everybody beside me. And that's really how it works. And it feels like politics is a little bit of that game. So as I started paying to Missouri politics, I think all the grassroots people that were giving me information turned out to be right on the button. And what really kind of turned the corner for me was when the Speaker of the House race came about. If you're not familiar with the Speaker of the House race, it was between a guy named John Patterson and a guy named Justin Sparks. And what really kind of blew me away was Justin Sparks. I had met, I'd interviewed him a couple times, I liked him. He shares my I'm a conservative Christian, right? I don't want to shove my ideas down everybody's throat, but that's who I am, and I think that's what the Republican Party primarily is. I think that's where most of the voters are at. So when the speaker of the race was going down, the grassroots were telling me how the whole thing played out. And I said, that just can't be true. You mean to tell me they're going to pick the Speaker of the House in the state of Missouri before that person is even reelected? They're going to pick the Speaker of the House before the 50-something plus new Congress people are seated? That sounds to me like old Scamarula. That's what it sounded like to me. I'm like, well, let me follow this for just a little bit. And I kind of got in trouble at my station just a little bit because we had 2 Congress people on our station that talked about the Bible every day, that had very conservative values, so I believed. And I'm not pointing fingers at them, I just didn't understand it. When they said they were going to vote for John Patterson, my antenna went up and go, wait a minute, you're voting for a guy for Speaker of the House, and if you're not familiar with how the government runs just in general, it's the Speaker of the House, it's the leader of the Senate, and it's the governor. They decide what bills are going to come to the floor. They decide on everything we're going to vote on. Without those 3, the governor, the leader of the House, and the leader of the Senate, nothing matters. They're the gatekeepers for all the legislation. So when you find out that your state has doubled their budget under the Republicans, and you go, wait a minute, I thought Republicans were for small government. And apparently we're not. When they started talking about DEI in schools, Senator Nick Schroer sent out a message from Parkway Schools, and it's DEI. It's all about DEI. It's about these kids, you know, if you're black, brown, pink, blue, and you're gay or you're straight, you go to this classroom, but it excluded all whites. And I thought, well, that's kind of weird. I thought we fought that fight once before, and we decided that was not the way to go. But that's what's going on, not only in our schools in Missouri, but also in the Capitol, right? And I'm thinking to myself the whole time, I thought this was a Republican Party that was a conservative party. And I know there's a lot of shades. I understand fully that there's a lot of different opinions within the Republican Party, but I didn't think that small government was up for debate within the Republican Party. Is there anybody that wants a bigger government, wants more power from the government? See, I don't find any Republicans, and the reason I started to flip out a little bit on the radio, I don't know if anybody heard that show where I kind of got into it with my producer. I got into him because I think it woke a lot of people up because it was about as raw as it gets. I'll tell you a little story about that if you're listeners of the show. When he started to get upset with me, I said, well, you know, I kind of let him have it for a little bit, and then he turned off the camera. When he turned, I was in Florida at the time, so when he turned off the camera, it turned off all communication to me. So I see people on my computer screen responding to me, so I know they can hear me, but what was happening was I couldn't communicate with the people in St. Louis, so I didn't respond. I just talked for 2 hours. No breaks, no anything, and I thought, you know what, let's just roll the dice here and let's tell everybody what I'm feeling and what I'm thinking. And what I was feeling and what I was thinking was I've spent about $250,000 of my own money going back and forth to Florida, stopping my career in the shoe business, which I was doing quite well, to chase this. I said, you know what, I have a microphone. I'm lucky enough to be on the radio right now. I think that I can wake a lot of people up. I think I have enormous energy. Like I said, I haven't eaten in 2 days, and I haven't slept in about 3 hours in the last 2 days. But I will crisscross this entire state to make sure that we, the people in this room, begin to take their power back away from the government. And here's the way I see it going down. Ben's a buddy of mine. Him and I are kind of working on this together, and we'll talk about the ins and outs of it over time. But what I see happening is I think the game in Jefferson City is completely rigged by big money, corporate money, and power. And if it's controlled by big money and they have all the procedures down and they know exactly what they need to do to get their people into positions of power so they can get done what they want to get done for big money. And once you realize it's rigged pretty much at every level, there's really no way to get out of the box, okay? So if you can't get out of the box, what's the only way to address your government? It's through enormous, relentless, unending pressure, right? So what we want to do is we want to have, once we start to get all of these grassroots people together, I get a little heated. If you ever listen to my show, I can get really wound up at times because I just don't like frauds. I don't like fakes. I don't like phonies. They irritate me to no end, and I get aggressive with them. I've got to learn to calm down. I've got to learn to calm down because what I want to do is I want to get an agenda where Republicans that are, whether they're considered establishment Republicans or grassroots Republicans, what fundamentals do we agree upon? What fundamentals nobody in the establishment can say, They're Republicans for much bigger government. They've doubled the budget. It's up to, I think, $54 billion now. Do we agree as Republicans that we do not want more government down our throats, in our hair? We saw what happened with COVID, right? So that was a little too much government, wasn't it? When they were telling you to wear your mask, your football helmet, your flippers, and your bubble wrap to go outside for a run, right? That was too much government. That was the indication to me, and what changed my mind as to, I can understand corrupt government. When you got trillions of dollars or billions of dollars floating around, you're gonna have some corruption. There's just, I don't think there's anything you can do about it. But when somebody tells me I have to stick a needle in my arm in order to travel or keep a job, my son lost a $200,000 job because he refused to get vaccinated. And he did that at 27 years old, right? And I said to him, thank you. I said to him, I said, listen, you know my views on it, but you're a grown man. And I said, what are you gonna do? He goes, I'm not getting that vaccine. I said, you're a good child. We raised you properly. You're doing things the right way. But when I saw that, I said, wait a minute, government has gotten too big. And if you completely focus on DC, to me, this is just my opinion, you can certainly have a different one, I think it's a fool's errand. I think you fight politics locally, where these people, just imagine the pressure that would be on these people if we get everybody around this state who has the same feeling as us, and you begin to fund it, so we are marketing our ideas, right? How do these people get out of the box when their entire party has turned on them and said, this isn't what we're asking you to do. Here's the things that we agree upon. This is what you're gonna do, right? And then we start to write bills with people that are on our team within the House and the Senate in Jefferson City, right? They're on our side. They believe in what we believe in. They start to write the bills, and then we follow those bills get blocked, if they get stopped, I will illuminate them. We're gonna try and get as many people in the radio business to do the exact same thing. And through that marketing campaign and through all that information starting to bubble to the top, I have a feeling that whether they are the establishment or whether they are the grassroots, at some point they're going to have to join hands because they're going to be there's going to be too much pressure. The phone calls, the emails, the going to the Capitol. We got to get people motivated. I don't think we have that much time. I mean, I could be a doomsdayer, but to me it looks like with AI, with some of the inventions that are starting to happen and the way we can be monitored and surveilled by our own government, I look at it and say, listen, I certainly understand when people say I want to watch The Masked Singer and they've got all these little hobbies that they want to do and they're all excited about stuff they're going to do on Monday or Tuesday night. I stay really focused on trying to fix Missouri. And I'll tell you one other thing about Missouri. I love this state. I had to leave it because of the taxes in Missouri. This is my life. I was making a lot of money. For me, I mean, for a kid from Rentner, when you're making the kind of money I was making, it was more than I ever thought I'd ever make in my life, right? So as that's beginning to happen, when I made the switch into broadcasting, I made a determination at that point when I switched over that I was going to not just talk about it. I was not going to just talk about it on the radio, talk about it endlessly, all the things that were wrong. I said, I'm going to have a goal, and we're going to try to figure out how to get this government back. When the episode where everybody got kind of wound up when I got into it with my producer, that way, if you've heard that show, that was me. That was my heart right on the table. I mean, I'm making $3,000 a month at the radio station, right? This is recently, $3,000 a month, and spending $1,000 getting back and forth to Florida to be here. And I had to do that. I had to move to Florida because of the taxes in the state of Missouri. My wife and I had an agreement when we got divorced. She didn't work, so when we got divorced, we made an agreement that my daughter was 10. I would pay for her to get through high school, right? So my wife could stay at home, and it was a chunk of money that I had to give her every month. And I agreed to it. There was no way to get out of it. There was no, hey, you lose your job. Hey, you got your salary cut. You still got to pay X amount of dollars. And I agreed to it, and that was the deal. When I started to lose my income because the business through COVID started to consolidate, I decided I have to move to Florida. No state income tax. I think at the time that I left here, it was 6.5%. So between the state income tax and the personal property tax that I was paying and my property taxes, it was a $22,000 or $23,000 less that I had to pay. And so I said, you know what, I have to go to Florida. I don't have a choice. I can't pay my ex-wife what I promised I was going to pay and which I'm legally bound to do. And that always has stuck in my head as it's just, to this day it makes me sick. Because my wife was fine with me getting my daughter through school before I moved to Florida. our back and forth. She was either going to move here, but she was fine with me letting my daughter get through high school. I couldn't afford to even stick around for my daughter, because if you knew my ex-wife, you'd know that she's not going to let me get out of a nickel. She wanted that money that we agreed to, and I can't say I blame her, because that was our agreement in marriage. But that is Missouri. That's Missouri. That's with a supermajority of Republicans. In the House, the Senate, we have the Attorney General's office. We have everything we could possibly need to get things done that we need to get done, and they don't get done. There's a reason it's not getting done. We got to put our finger on it. We got to figure out how to fix the system. And I think the best way to fix the system is through pressure. And I'll take any advice that anybody has. I try to listen to everybody. I've been talking to Ben a lot lately. I think the pressure campaign is the only way to make it work. I really do. I think when there's so many grassroots people that are so frustrated. I mean, every time I talk to them, they want to fight. They just want to go after it. They want to get down. They want to get into the ring with these people in the establishment, because they've been through this so many times, where they think they've got the right candidate, then they go up there and it's not the right candidate. They think they got the right cause, and then the cause doesn't come to fruition, and they're just beat down and they're tired. I try to tell them I think they've gotten so frustrated that I think it may backfire if we go that way. And let me explain to you why very quickly, and then I'll close it down. I think when you begin the fight is when they begin to shape the narrative about you. I'll just say in my own, since I've been here, when I really went after the establishment, I started hearing people talk about me on other radio stations, I heard politicians, and they started to frame me as some lunatic. He's a yeller, he's a screamer, they started to frame me as this maniac, and I thought, all right, I see what's going on around here. Okay, what we'll do is we'll just challenge you to give us your point of view. When I say that we should shrink that budget down to size, what say you, establishment? Do you agree? I mean, do you agree that we should be at a $54 billion budget in the state of Missouri and get half of it from the feds? And that is why we have DEI. That's why we have ESG scores for small businesses. That's all because the federal government has reached down and taken hold of the state of Missouri. And the people that run our state, in my humble opinion, love it. It's a lot of money coming in. They can sell it to people who don't really understand what freedom is all about, and they say, we're getting all this money from the federal government, we're bringing home the bacon, but then we have to apply, or I have to live by the rules that the federal government wants us to live under. That's my take on it so far. So if there are any questions, anybody that has any ideas for us, we're at the very beginning stages of this. We are going to organize all of the grassroots. I'm going to use my show and ask everybody within the radio business, television business that I have associations with to begin to ask the proper questions. Right now, if you just go through talk radio, you're going to see, and I'll just be honest with you, you're going to see a lot of the Republican Party funds most of the radio stations. So the questions that you should be asked, or that should be asked, they don't get asked. It becomes a pom-pom session. You know, we got so-and-so coming in, he's a Republican senator and they all cheer and they come in and they kind of huck it up back and forth. That's all fine and dandy, but there are questions that they should be asked. You know, when I have these people on my show, I try to be as nice as I can to them, but I run through all of the things that I think conservatives want done through government, which is very little, quite honestly. And they agree, but then they tell me why it didn't get done. And I'll say, well, it's been almost 20 years, right? You guys have had the reins for 20 years. I mean, how long should we wait before we get our state back in order? How long would it take? Because if we get on the side of, put it this way, if we push the establishment in the right direction and begin to highlight where the holes and the flaws in their arguments are, if we do that across the state, every single corner, and we stay committed to it, they're going to break. It's only going to, my opinion, I think Ben agrees with me, I think the only way you can get to them is pressure. I don't think you're going to be able to vote. I don't, with all due respect, when it comes to electronic voting machines, with me personally, I don't think we should have electronic voting machines in any way, shape, or form. And the reason I say that isn't because Tim has got some game running on. It's simply because people do not have confidence in them anymore, whether it be tabulators, electronic voting, anything with electricity in it that could possibly change the vote. He might run a perfectly good election, but are they running them in St. Louis County that could overwhelm and give a seat to somebody we don't like? Are they being honest? Should we have a day off of work? We got a day off of work for everything. Why do we not have a day off of work for a state election? And why do I care about whether both parties are looking at it? If I think it's a uniparty, I don't care if both parties are watching the votes. I don't trust either one of them. That's just me. I want the community, I want us off work, I want us paying attention to our state again so that we can begin to fix it. That's the way I look at it. So for me, I don't want any electronic voting machines. I think we should have a state holiday. I think we should celebrate our freedom. I think we should celebrate our liberties. I think that makes a better society than the one we're in now, because you cannot go anywhere in the state of Missouri within the Republican Party, just like you guys did, and say, do you have full confidence in the election system in the state of Missouri? You overwhelmingly get no. I had somebody that just recently called me, said they were at a fundraiser with Josh Hawley, maybe 2 years ago. And they had all the big donors. Josh Hawley was there, and somebody asked about the electronic voting machines. And Josh Hawley said, does anybody have problems with the electronic voting machines? And the way the story was relayed to me, everybody in the room raised their hand. Right? So if everybody in the room supporting the Republicans have a problem with the voting machines, then why aren't they gone? Do you see what I mean? It's just, we own the show. It's our show. We own the House, we have the Senate, we have the governor's office, we have everything, we have a supermajority. The Democrats are irrelevant other than a filibuster. Other than that, they are completely irrelevant in the big scheme of things. So why can't we get things done the way we want them done? Why can't we just say, this is a list of things that we all agree upon, whether you're grassroots or whether you're conservative, but as a Republican, these are things we agree on. Write the legislation, follow it, find out who blocks it, and then we will pound away at the people that block it. That is gonna, the pressure that the people felt when we went on our little tirade over the course of the last couple months on my radio show, the pressure that was put on some of these Republicans, you'd see them freaking out already. You could see them starting to panic already because they're starting to recognize that people are starting to figure everything out. Look at this room, I can't believe it. I mean, I can't believe it. I don't get to see it very often. I don't get to see how many people are listening. We don't pay for ratings. It's a 50,000 plus deal to find out what's going on. But I do sense, just in talking to friends and family of mine, that there's a change. People are starting to recognize that the state is where the action's at. You can make your state better just by simply spreading information, funding ourselves. We become a political entity. We become a political entity. We make the government do what we want to do. We don't continue to ask them for permission. Oh, will you please get DEI out of our schools? No, we don't want DEI in our schools. You guys, there's no Republicans that want DEI in their schools, right? Anybody want DEI in their schools? Right? So you just say, well, we don't want DEI in our schools. We think that is that is terrible for our young kids, terrible to teach them, terrible for culture. I'll have a guy on my show tomorrow. There's in Wentzville, all right, very conservative out in Wentzville. There is a 6'6" transgender man who is going into the bathroom with young girls. Okay? This is happening in our state, and he'll be on my show tomorrow. He called me, and we had about a 2-hour conversation the other day because he's like me, gets very emotional about things. And he said, what's crazy about it is everybody in the establishment, even some of the grassroots, are funding and holding fundraisers for the one guy on the school board. This is not Wentzville, by the way. This is, there's two issues here. I got them confused. Let me get this back. This is Francis Howell School District. But there is the guy that everybody's raising money for to be the conservative on the school board is the one guy that's blocking that legislation or that rule that would keep boys in boys' bathrooms, girls in girls' bathrooms. And I don't know, again, how many Republicans think that it's fine for a 6'6" grown biological male to walk into the bathroom with their 15-year-old daughter? Right? These are things that are easy. This should not, but he's afraid of a lawsuit. He's afraid of a lawsuit. He had an attorney talk to him. He had other people on the board talk to him, and they said, you have indemnity. You don't have to worry about anything. And he's still not going to do it, and he still has support of a bunch of people. You know, I don't want to get into names today, but a lot of people on the grassroots and the establishment side just held a fundraiser for this guy. You see what I'm saying? And I just think that you got to highlight those options. I think you got to get the guy that says he doesn't want to get sued. And I think he should be upfront in public with the guy that says we should get rid of these rules, right? And let them have a debate, because you can't win that debate with conservatives. You can't win that debate. You can't win debate about a lot of things that are going on in the state. So I think that is the overriding message, is that we want to get everybody connected. If you can, we're going to start an organization. We're not looking for any money. Ultimately, we'll have to fund it. But right now, we're just looking for signups. It is Missouri Doge taxfreeconservatives.org. If you just sign up for that, I want every Republican that I can find to sign up for it. And what we're going to do is we're going to begin to highlight issues for you. We'll say, okay, here's what's going on. We'll tell you what bills. I have a woman named Lisa Panette that comes on my show all the time. Lisa is an absolute rock star as far as I'm concerned, because the time and energy she takes to read those bills and figure out what's going on within Jefferson City, it's overwhelming. She goes all the way down to the language. And my wife asked me, she heard me on the phone talking to Lisa, and she goes, well, what's going on? What do you mean the language? And I said, honey, think about it like, I watch football all the time, so I said, think about it in football. If I'm designing a play as the offensive team in a football game, and I'm going to run to the right, I know where the hole's going to be. The politicians know where the holes are. They write legislation to make it look like they're doing something very wonderful for conservatives, and then they leave a little hole in there when we're not paying attention to get just the opposite. They do it all the time. Go ahead.
Excuse me, I just got a question. I wonder how politicians know where the hole is, because they can't even properly take oath of office.
You might be right with that. You might be right with that. And to be honest with you, I don't know what the difference is anymore. I don't know where the lobby ends and the politicians begin, to be honest with you. I think they're one and the same for the most part, but I hear what you're saying. And there's one on each end of the money. And I think this is a great state. I love Missouri. I lived in Kansas City for a while. One of my daughters went to Mizzou. My other son went to Fontbonne. I had one that went to St. Louis University. I grew up in this state, coached baseball here. My dad has been in AA for almost 40 years, so you get to know all of his AA buddies from the time I was 17 years old. I love Missouri. I think that if any state in the country, and I've traveled them all, I was 35 years on the road in the shoe business, there's nothing like Missouri. It is different here. Where other place in the world do you go? What high school did you go to? And you know exactly where they went. I know some Bobby Joe Blues went there, and you know what I mean. Everybody starts talking about it. That's not the way it is around the world. It's not the way it is around the country. You can get things done here.
Japanese surrendered on the USS Missouri.
There you go. There you go. Go ahead. I'm sorry. MissouriDoge.org. You got to spell out Missouri. So you're going to see two of them. There's a guy named Ben Baker who has something called MoDoge. He spells it out underwards, but if you go to, is it MoDoge.com or is that just on X, Ben? Do you know? Yeah, Ben Baker. There's another guy that has a similar name to ours, but that's MoDoge. If you go to ours, just spell it out, MissouriDoge.org, D-O-G-E. Yes, if we can take questions, fine.
All right, so if you have a question, I'm going to start right up front because it's closest.
Yeah, where are they? I don't have them.
Can you give us the name
Oh.
of the person that's running for the Francis House School Board?
The guy's name that I'm told is Randy Cooks, I think is his name.
Thank you.
And a guy named Dave Jaworski will be on tomorrow. Can I just get those out to you guys? That's got the information on it. P-I-N-N-E-T. Two T's. Yep. Is that right? Huh? I think it's one T. Two N's, one T. I'm sorry. Two N's, one T.
Could you just talk a little bit about what we can do as citizens to resist the personal property taxes and the real estate taxes that are being increased?
Okay, so there's bills going through the House and the Senate right now. A guy named Richard West, who used to be on our station, he came on just recently and said he's putting forth a bill they want to stage out personal property tax. So they want to stage it out. There are bills going through to get rid of the income tax. So this is what I mean. We got so loud about these taxes that I think there is pressure. I don't have full confidence that they actually want to get rid of them, but they certainly want to make it look like they do. And that's why I say if you follow the bills to their conclusion to where they get stopped, if the floor leader doesn't bring it up or it gets stuck in the House or it gets so watered down it doesn't really mean anything anyway, or they're just changing from one tax to the next, that kind of thing, we want to be able to explain that to people. We want to be able to send out emails and say, okay, here it is. Here's the legislation. This is what we fought for. This is what they're trying to do. And that's where the pressure campaign comes on. And the more people that know what's going on, the louder it's going to get and the more sustained it is over a long period of time. I personally believe, and I've met a lot of these guys, I think even some of the ones in the establishment are kind of trapped in a system. I really do feel it's that way. I think they go there with good intentions, And for some, I don't know what goes on in Jefferson City. I don't know if it's the water. I don't know if it's the air. I don't know what's going on up there. But when they get in there, something seems to change, because when you have a Speaker of the House who is the gatekeeper for legislation, when that person is picked, he's only got a 2-year term. When that person is picked 18 months before the official vote, that's kind of all you need to know about whether they're looking out for the party power or they're looking out for the people. That's all you need to know, because if 50 people just got elected on making promises of things they wanted to get done, they get into the House of Representatives and the Speaker of the House has already been chosen for them. It doesn't, you don't really, that's why I said nobody will debate me. On my show all the time, I said, if anybody disagrees, just come on and debate me. How can you debate that? How can you debate that you're making the most important person in the House that brings legislation to the floor? How can you argue that that person should be selected 18 months before the official vote? It's an argument you can't make.
I was just wondering, because of the speaker, Patterson now, if he doesn't want a bill, though, he won't even have it come to the floor.
That's it. That's it. So they get to stop it. That's what I mean, and that's why I said that it has to be pressure, because they have the system rigged, right? He was one of the most liberal House members that we had. He put the sunset clause in the transgender for kids bill. He's the one that put the sunset clause in there. He was I think he was one of 2 or 3 people that voted against the Amendment 3. He was one of the ones that said, right? So my argument to all the people in the House was, wait a minute, how can you come out to all of these shows, and I'm listening to these senators and House people, they go on all the radio shows, they do their circuit, and they tell people that they want certain things. And I said, but if you want those certain things, and you understand that the House is the gatekeeper for all legislation, how can you vote for the most liberal person in the party?
Right. Yeah.
How can you explain that to people? And they try. You've heard politicians, right? They try and they spin it, and by the time you get done with them, you're like, I'm confused, but what happened here? Right? If you've heard them before. But I think if you just stay consistent with, look, this is the fact. This is what you guys are doing. The gig is up, right? I don't think Republicans, the way we would perceive Republicans, I don't think they're the ones running the show. I don't. I think there's something, and I don't want to be a conspiracy theorist, but I don't know what's going on up there, but there is no conservative legislation coming out of Jefferson City, and yet we all are voting for conservatives time and time and time again, and here we are.
All right, real quick, if you have questions, please still raise your hand, because we can't hear when you ask the question towards the front of the room.
Thank you.
For anybody in the back of the room. So I'll bring the mic to you in the order, try to be in the order that I see your hands up here. So we've got a question back here, and then I'll come back towards the front.
Sure.
Hi, Rob. This is
Hey,
Josh
Josh,
Wilcott.
what's up, buddy? How are you?
How are you?
I saw you at the, were you at the House or the Senate the other day?
I was, well, I've been everywhere.
You were testifying.
For Justin Sparks' vote, yeah.
You were testifying with your son.
Yeah, we were.
That was
Yeah.
fantastic.
So a couple of things, and I actually pointed this out on X recently. One of the things when we're talking about Amendment 3, the House of Representatives, our House of Representatives had bills that were talking about basing sex on biology and getting rid of some of this stuff that Amendment 3 was trying to go away with in our Constitution. So people had already testified as of January of last year for these bills, and they were stopped beforehand. The interesting thing about it is the same groups that were funding Amendment 3 were the same people that were testifying against it. So part of a suggestion that I had is, as I've been talking to people I'm in St. Charles, but as I've been talking to people in my community, I've been showing them how to look up bills, how to look up voting records, how to look up witness testimony, so they can quickly go through it and talk about it. That was the question that I asked every rep that I talked to that were supporting Patterson. You guys already knew, based upon the House testimony, that these pro-Amendment 3 groups that were funding this were testifying against the bills that Amendment 3 was trying to strip.
What did they say?
Not a single one of them said anything.
It's so crazy, isn't it?
They couldn't say anything about it because they already knew. So, yeah.
Well, I was going to say, is everybody aware of initiative petition reform? Does everybody know that story? If you just very quickly, initiative petition was the #1 agenda item for the GOP. #1, not number 2, 3, 4, or 5. #1 agenda item for the Republican Party. And with a supermajority and nothing in their way, they just couldn't quite get it done. And when they couldn't get it done, what happened was money started to flow in to change our Constitution. And now we went from the strictest abortion laws in the country to some of the most liberal abortion laws. Now, is that going to change? You've got, Justin Sparks and Mike Moon have legislation. My gut feeling is they'll probably make some kind of compromise at some point, because I think the Republican Party's under attack from their own. That's an issue that gets people really fired up, and I think they're taking the bows and arrows for that. But I have a feeling there'll be some kind of compromise. But we had it where we wanted it. If you're a conservative like I am, we had it right where we wanted it. We had it. All we had to do was protect it. Yeah. Do you really think they wanted to protect it? No. Exactly. And that's what I mean about just getting frustrated. I want my politicians to stand before me and explain their votes all the time. I want them to have public debates. I tell them all the time, I'll have a public debate with anybody, because I'm not trying to win the argument. I'm just trying to find out where you're coming from, because I don't know if you're coming from the same place I'm coming from. Go ahead.
Probably everyone here knows, but the Shield Maidens.
Yep.
Yesterday, they're 2 hours now.
I know.
So I'm
I love
glad.
them.
They outline every one of these bills, and so many of them are changed, even at the last minute.
Yeah.
All the wording, and the wording is purposefully broad so that that can be interpreted later. They talked about everything from our water rights being threatened.
Yep.
People can sell them out from under us, and the people are companies, and then you can't find out who that is.
Right.
It is imperative that we know about these bills and follow them all the way. So we kind of need an army
That's what I'm saying.
I'm not sure I could read and interpret it, but if people I trust, like you and they, tell me what's going on, because they attend all of these. They are heroes. They are just...
I learned so much from them. There's 15 or 20 people within the grassroots movement that pushed me so hard to start talking about Missouri politics. I remember when I started, I almost felt like a fraud. I just didn't exactly know what I was talking about, and I trusted them to a degree, but I just didn't really know. And then I went probably through, I don't even know if it was 90 days of I went to the Capitol, I was watching all of their hearings, I went through the legislative process in the last session, and I saw all of these great bills. Bill Eigel was on our show at one point, so I was talking to him as things were going. He was sending me text messages, okay, gold and silver bill, shot down, IP reform, couldn't get it through, just one good bill after another, and I thought, something's fishy. These people are right. These people that are telling me something's going on around here are right, because there's no reason that I can figure out why any Republican, whether rhinos, middle of the, whatever you want to call them, it's just a principle within the Republican Party. It's a principle within conservative ideology. And for those things not to make it to the finish line with a supermajority, again, I always say on my show, if it doesn't make sense, it might make sense.
We just need to stay on top of it.
It's got to stay, and they're fantastic.
And they do that.
They do.
They do that.
Shield Maidens, if you listen to 93.3, Shield Maidens is Stacy Shore and Lisa Panette, and they do a show that digs down into what's going on. I absolutely love them. I think
But it's on
they're
Saturday.
fantastic. Saturdays at noon, and they're on for 2 hours now. They just got extended another hour as well.
And what time are you on again?
I'm on from 9 to noon in the morning.
So you're taking that Charlie Kirk's place?
Just for an hour. Just for an hour.
This is just for
I knew you'd like that.
this is just for information. The Shield Maidens have a really nice site that you can go back and pick up all of these shows that were missed. So
I highly recommend. I get most of my information from them. And what I started doing, when I really noticed I was onto something, is when they were feeding me information, and then I would have Republicans on my show, and I wasn't trying to burn them. I probably should have been, but I wasn't at the time. I just wanted to find out if what they were telling me would coincide with what I was learning from them. They would always accept the position that I was coming from, but give me some wiggle bunch of BS as far as I was concerned as to why those things weren't being accomplished. And that's when I started to realize those girls are on it. They know what's going on. Anybody else?
Yeah, but Rob, I just got a question.
Sure.
What year was it when you moved out of Missouri down to Florida?
I officially moved in about 2023.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I've been going back and forth since I started dating my wife, which was in 2016.
Okay.
So I've been going back and forth.
Yeah. I just wonder, there's a lot of significant things went on, like in Missouri, like between 2010,
Oh yeah.
2016.
And I'm learning all that.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
the problem is when I
Yeah.
talk to Ben, Ben's been around forever. He knows every nook and cranny of the government and what's been going on. I'm learning. The only thing I think I know for sure is without a movement of the people. Without a movement of the people, I don't think it changes. I don't think that enough people in the state of Missouri understand what is happening. I always say if I go to the grocery store and ask 20 people who the governor of Missouri is, half of them might get it. They just don't pay attention to it. They like Fox News. They like CNN, they like MSNBC, they like the national news. But really, politics is local. It really is. When people used to tell me that back, I'm like, what? I just love national news. I just was caught up in it like I was watching a movie. But it's the state level where the action takes place.
Right,
It really is. Because we can block anything out of D.C. that we don't like, we can just block it here in the state if we take care of business.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you. Good.
Quick question, two-part. What happened to the Tea Party movement and our billboards and effective means to get our point across?
That might be better for you. Tea Party, I'm trying to get those people back together, though.
I'll be glad to speak to that.
Go ahead.
Well, when I get the mic out. Sorry.
I don't know. He's got a mic.
I really want to finish because please.
I don't know the answer to that question. He will.
What do you think?
I just have a question. When COVID, when your family thought you were crazy, did they say, "Oh my God, you were right"?
No, and I talk about that on the show all the time. This is what I find to be so fascinating. Privately, and I did a podcast, but it was a podcast. My son said, when I told my son what was happening, my son was probably 24, 25 at the time. He said, "Dad, you should do a podcast." And I said, "Podcast?" I mean, I was in the shoe business. Podcast. I didn't even know what he said. He said, "You should alert our friends and family what you think is going to happen, and I'll do it for you." So he came down, set everything up for me, and I began telling just friends and family. And I looked up one time, and there's like 3,500. I mean, I sent it to 50 people. A month later, I got 3,500 people listening. I'm like, wow, this is striking a chord with people. They don't like these restrictions with COVID. They don't like what's going down with COVID. They're very interested in somebody just saying, "Hey, look, something's not right here. This is an infringement on our civil liberties, to say the least." And it just kind of grew from there. I mean, that's how it went down. Sam Page, exactly.
As a devout Christian and 82 years old, I've been privileged to travel across this country. And when you see the states and the cities, they're just like Missouri, run by Democrats. And look at the mess we're in. What we're doing here now is setting a model to show and to bag up Donald Trump. You see, cleaning up the swamp in the deep state there. We have to do it here on the state level. Like Brother Robb often say, we are setting the model so that we can show. So go with the with the Missouri, DOGE.com. We the people for solution, accountability movement. Brothers and sisters, this is what we're going to have to do, and we're going to have the very organization a little splinter now when you first started off. Get the central committee and everything set up so that we can continue to organize and build this and be able to show others that this is how we done it here. And thank you all.
Right. Anybody else? Go ahead.
So is it .org or .com on the
.org.
Doge?
.org.
It
was .com, and we thought that felt a little too commercial. So .org. Ultimately we have to fund it, but we have to fund it together, right? So we got all kinds of different ways to do that. I want to make sure that everybody understands that gets involved, that we're doing it for the right reasons. I mean, so Ben and I were talking about it. I said we can't collect any money just yet because I got to figure out what's going on with the money to make sure that there's nothing untoward going on, that nobody. Movements like these, everybody will try to weasel their way in and try to divide it. It's just the way it goes. When you're in politics, there's going to be somebody that tries to get you off course, and I want to make sure that it's completely transparent and that we have wins. I really think that when the fast forward this 3 months from now, 6 months from now, I think you're going to be fascinated by what happens. I think that the more everybody in here can stand up and talk to what's going on, once we start educating Shield Maidens of Missouri, that kind of thing, when that starts to happen corner to corner and there begins to be a movement, politicians feel that pressure. That's the only thing they really react to anymore. I always say, if the pressure outweighs the money, then everything starts to change. But the pressure has to come from the people. If they don't know what's happening, they win.
Yeah, Rob, with
You
this,
look familiar to me. Where do I know you from?
January 8th. We sat and talked for a little bit.
Oh, that's right.
So,
That's right.
So, Rob, when I got a few things, but the Missouri Doge, how is it going to get people engaged if they're not meeting face to face? Because face to face is much more important, kind of like you see in here. We got 80 people in the room tonight.
Fantastic.
Okay, and so how do you get that? Because that has been the thing. We had an organization, We the Free People. We had 280 people at one meeting at one point, and at some point it just fell apart. Okay, so that's huge. That's
Yep.
the first thing. So to get you an answer to that one, and then how did Missouri Doge come together, and what's funding it? 'Cause
Nothing's funding it yet. Ultimately, what we'll do is we'll try to get money from everybody, and I'm talking about $50 donations or less. Then we'll go to donors. We'll try to fund it. What was your first question? I forget what the first question you asked me. How did Doge come about?
Somebody about face to face. How are we going to get?
Face to face, what we want to do is we want to get basically ambassadors, leaders within every little county. We're going to go after every single county.
The counties.
I don't want to explain exactly what our mode is, but the intent is to get every congressional district, everything covered, so that we begin to have these conversations over and over again, to where, when people wake up, they go, I know what's going on now. Now I know what kind of questions to ask. Now I know the process to get things done. Now I know the rules, the procedures. I think Ben will tell you the establishment uses rules and procedures against people that are unsuspecting. I didn't realize that. He's been, how long have you been around this game? 53 years.
Yeah.
Right? So he tells me things. He gives me predictions about things that are going on. He just did another one just recently, and everybody thought he was wrong. I was telling people the vote's going to go this way because this is what Ben's telling me he's hearing. Everybody disagreed with me, and he was right again. And he said it has a lot to do with just the setup, just the way the parties are set up.
Right. So to that point, the counties, because I've been advocating in this room for a long time. It's city by city, county by county, to the state level. And the reason why I'm mentioning that right now is we just recently voted for the 109th district here, okay, for our local state rep. He's one that said that he would not vote for Justin Sparks, okay? He was in this room month after month for every one of these meetings for 2 years almost, he with the occasional miss, okay? However, he's not in the room now that he's elected, okay? And for those of you that don't know who that is John Simmons.
Yeah.
Okay?
And people were calling me about him.
And you need to hold John Simmons accountable. Okay? He's told us stuff. He sent a letter to the Republican Central Committee, 3.5 pages, to why he was going to vote for John Patterson, and that's all hogwash. So what I'm telling you is you have to hold your elected representatives, whether we have 4 in Franklin County. We have Brad Banderman, John Simmons, Mike McGurl, and he's on the way out, and then you have your state senator, Ben Brown. Hold them accountable. Hold their feet accountable. And if you're not in our county, you have yours over there, you're going to have to do the same. And that's how this works.
We agree 100%. We're gonna, the intent,
yes, sir,
is that I'll speak anywhere anybody wants me to speak. The station's like, Rob, you should get. I don't want any money for it. I want to be able to go out and speak. I don't want to. I'm not making a career out of speaking. What I do want to do is I want to get as many people to take the microphone. Any of you could stand up and say what I'm saying. You know it, right? You just need somebody to connect all of the dots together. You need to get somebody. My background is in organization. I mean, that's what I do. When I was in business, that's what I did. I ran sales business. It's a lot of people, and in order to keep people on the same page, you have to be exactly like you said. There has to be people in every corner of the state. We have to communicate regularly, and we have to motivate people. Some people just aren't motivated. I did where we had in St. Charles Rock Road recently, and it snowed a foot. I couldn't even go into the parking lot to where I was going, and 40 people showed up. I didn't think I thought I was going to show up by myself. But you know who showed up that night with me? Justin Sparks. Justin Sparks showed up, and I thought for sure he was not going to show up. I didn't even think they would have it. Do you remember that when Jeff Jacks ran that little event over in St. Charles Rock Road? I couldn't park in the parking lot. I had to park down the street and walk through the ice and snow just to get to the place I was going to, and I walk in, there's 40 people there because people are hungry to get things done. I just think we have to tie it all together. And by the way, how did Missouri Doge get started? Ben and I are looking at ways to fix the problem and not just talk about it. For me, it was never my idea to get on radio and just talk about problems forever. I knew that if I did a good enough job, people would see it, hear it, jump on my page, and then we could begin to organize to fix it. Without fixing it, to me, I feel kind of like, yeah, I just feel like a fraud if I'm not trying to fix the problem. It doesn't make any sense to sit up and complain every day.
Since we're talking about our representatives tonight, we're calling them out, basically. I'm calling out John Simmons. This 4 years ago, was during session. We was at a Franklin County Central Committee meeting. We was talking about the gas tax, right? Or the rebate. Is it a rebate or a gas tax? I don't know.
Do you know? I don't know the answer.
Rebate.
It's a gas tax.
It's a rebate.
Yeah.
So we had that debate at the Central Committee meeting, and I asked my Representative John Simmons. I says, John, is gas tax or sorry, wasn't the gas? It was a gas tax, but it refers to the Hancock Amendment, because the Hancock Amendment says that if it's a tax increase above a certain percent, it's got to go in front of the people. So the state legislature, like you said, found the hole. They go, well, if it's can't be above 12% or something. So they broke it down. Each year they raise it 3 or 4%. And I said, John, so I says, is the John Hancock Amendment, is it still valid? He goes, tongue in cheek kind of, and he goes, he got kind of upset and frustrated, and he goes, he said, they just go around it. I said, who's they?
Right. Right. If you don't call them out, if you don't stand and scream, they all should be standing and screaming.
So my point is, they violate the Constitution at every time it comes up. The one subject bills, every session.
Just talked about it.
The John Hancock Amendment, they knew what they were doing. They just found a way to go around it.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
You're right on the button. Anybody else? All right, go ahead.
We represent Crawford County, we the people.
Yep.
And they wanted us to find out more about this, and so keep talking it up on the radio.
I will.
That's all we can say.
I will. I will say this. Ultimately, it's going to be, because I'm going to be the voice that you're going to hear trying to connect it all. I want to make sure that we develop. He's talking about developing something, and I get into Ben. I've known him for a little bit, getting to trust each other. He tells me a lot of information that I need to know. But we want to develop something that is evergreen. This isn't just this next session. We're looking at building an organization where the people understand how to petition their government again. It's been lost, and I think it's probably been lost by design. But we forgot about who runs the show, right? We'll put a video out on our site here before too long, and it's where Ronald Reagan says, we drive the car. We drive the car. They're just the car. We drive it. You've got Donald Trump, and in the 2017 inauguration, he said, we are taking the money or the power from this group of criminals, basically, as he's pointing behind him, and we're going to turn it to you, the American people. And I always say, did people really know what he meant? Because you got to get to work now. He wins, but now we go to work because now we got a finite amount of time to make the changes. And now Trump's got a huge following. He's doing a lot of great things already, and I think we piggyback off of that momentum and we take our government back. It's really that simple. Okay. Anybody else?
Just got to figure out what mechanisms our founding fathers left us with
to do it.
To hold on to our government.
That's right.
They're out there. They have not been amended. They're still valid. We know.
We just got to use them. Yeah, we got to use them. Absolutely. Ben? But before I go, I'm sorry.
I just want to take a second to say from heartfelt thank you for zigzagging across the country and all you do to bring us this information and bring us together.
Thank you,
Robb.
My man.
I just got to say we all got to learn the Constitution. The Constitution isn't for us, it's for the government. It's for us to hold their feet to the fire. It's ours. We are the beneficiaries of the Constitution, and we tell them how to operate it. So until we can do that, and you can step back and say, "I know what you're doing," and when we decide to throw off The government, that's part of the first sentence in the Constitution. Everybody needs to learn it, read it, and memorize it.
Amen. All right, everybody. I'm going to let Ben talk for just. You got another one? Go ahead.
Got a couple more questions.
Sure, fine.
Okay. We'll introduce Ben here in just a minute.
Okay.
This may be redundant, but I know an attorney that are these the ones in Jeff City that write these bills, you know, and they find these holes? Who's finding the holes? But yet they have these legal people that go over the bills. So I'm a little confused.
The way I understand it is they have bureaucrats that write those bills. In fact, this is another one that happened last legislative session. They wanted 48 hours. Bill Eigel wanted 48 hours to read the bills, and the Republicans didn't take it up, didn't want it. And I thought, again, is there any Republican that doesn't think our legislators should read bills before they sign them? Right? I mean, where's the disagreement? Like, if you went to any establishment Republican, there's probably in here a John Simmons, if you will, or anybody that people are kind of down on right now, and you ask them that question, how can they possibly, where do you run? So when that legislation goes through next time, we're going to find out where it stops. And wherever it stops, if it's in the House or it's in the Senate, because that's their trick. That's their trick. I think we all know it, right? If it gets it through the House, the Senate blocks it. If it gets through the Senate, the House blocks it. If it gets through both, the governor vetoes it. That's kind of the strategy right now. And it's depressing, but that is the reality of it all. Okay, go ahead.
Okay. I was red-pilled about 40 years ago, and then about 30 years ago, my mom started dragging me to meetings, or I willingly went to meetings. And over the course of the years, we live in St. Louis County, now we live in Warren County. These are some of the most consistent meetings that people this size shows up almost all the time. But you're talking about motivating. What do we do to motivate people? Like, whenever Trump got in the first time, all of a sudden, there's nobody at meetings anymore. They thought everything was going to be grand, and we know that's not true. And of course, now we know how important the state level is, but to motivate people to actually show up and get involved.
Right. And to be honest with you, I think it's my personal opinion. Ben may have a different opinion than me. I think it's the marketing. You know, I'll give you an example. I tell my friends all the time, I said, remember when there was the Paris shooting and everybody had the Paris flag up on their Facebook? Does everybody remember that when that was going on? People, when they understand goodness, they want to join on to it. They want it, but they got to see wins, and they got to have direction, and they got to feel like they can win. Right now, it seems to me like when I talk to the grassroots, they just feel like there's just how many more ways can we try this thing? How many different ways can we tackle this problem? And it just doesn't seem to get solved. So for me, it is about funding and marketing it. For example, if John Simmons is somebody that has betrayed you, if you see it that way politically, if all the signs are up around where he lives, right, and you're talking about what he promised versus what he did on a billboard, and you start to see those, people will drive by those and they'll honk their horns and they'll start getting excited. But as it gets funded, my buddy told me he had a podcast and he had millions. He was like in the top 15 of podcasts, and I had him on my show. And I was talking to him privately afterwards after he made some comments, and I said, when you started talking about all these supposed conspiracy theories about what was going on, and people started to realize that you were getting it right, I said, what happened? He goes, that's when it all falls apart. And I go, why would it fall apart there? He goes, because that's when people have to do something. Right? That's when people have to do something. So we have to get people to want to do it. You know, you gotta have somebody that leads the parade, and there has to be more than me. I'm certainly not going to get it done by myself. But I think a lot of these radio people, if it's good ratings for them and it's good for them, I think once they start to see the momentum start to happen, I think you'll see more and more people from around the state saying the exact same thing. The pressure campaign will begin. We'll market it. We'll follow the bills, and we'll just have a more educated populace. Really, that's what it boils down to. Because I think we want the same things. I think there's probably 10 things that we could all list that, whether it be the establishment or the grassroots, you just can't get out of that box. That is what a Republican is all about. So if you're navigating off that road, we just want to point you out and make sure that everybody knows it and that they hear it consistently. Where does who live? Well, you guys were just talking about, where's John Simmons? From this area, right? Yeah, from this area.
So, on a personal level, moving forward, how can we pray for you?
You know what's funny? What's so interesting about that is that's the last thing I was going to say. If you would, just pray that I do the right things. I pray every day because I'm emotional. I can be short-tempered at times. I don't like phony frauds. It's just, there's something in me. I don't understand why I'm like that, but I get I just don't like when people are, I tell my dad all the time, I said, he's getting ready to write a $500 personal property tax bill. My dad does not have the means, right? He just doesn't. So for him to write a $500 bill, it hurts. And I said, Dad, if somebody came into your pocket and stole $500 out of your pocket, you'd get your Smith & Wesson out, wouldn't you? He said, yeah. I said, but when the government does it, it seems like there's just nothing you can do. But there is. There is. We just have to stay motivated and keep pressing. We will get it done. Just remember that I said this to you. If it's the first time we've ever talked, this is going to happen. I pray about it every single day. My wife thinks I have lost my mind. She goes, you are so consumed with it. I said, honey, I'm now in a competition to where I know what's right, I know what's wrong, I pray about it. I tell people all the time, when my father got sober in January of 1987, that took a miracle from God. If you've ever been around somebody who's a drug addict and an alcoholic and you just feel like they've been through rehab 75 times, they're just never going to change. He got the first time in his life, got down on his knees, prayed to God that he would take away the desire for him to drink. And that was January 14th, 1987. Hasn't had a drink since. He went from being a scumbag to being one of the nicest, most wonderful people in the world. And I believe God's got something in store for us. And I really believe, and this is the last thing I'll say, thank you for saying that, by the way. I really appreciate it. I think that Missouri will ultimately be a template. I think we'll be a template. I think when the word starts to spread that we're getting things accomplished, and it's long term, it's not just let's try to win 2028 or 2026, but this is the way we're going to run our society moving forward, right? And we start dictating what we want as far as legislation. I think at some point here, within the not too distant future, you'll see the shift. You'll start people being more and more interested, and you're going to see politicians. I always say, feet don't fail me now when people get up and right when they get excited and they're right in front of you. That's when things start to change. That's my opinion. But if you would, please say a prayer for me because I could go off the rails at any minute. I'm trying to stay grounded. my wife for sure. She's a saint. Let me put it that way. But I thank you so much for coming out. It means the world to me that this many people would show up I love it. Thank you so much. I think she's got one more question.
So I have a question for everybody. Was anybody here on Friday night listening to I know you were, the thing about the income tax? So I just have a question for you. What do you guys think about that? How does that sound? Do you think it's a good thing or? I'm
going to tell you what I think.
I'm just curious.
I can preach both sermons on both sides of that argument, but if we do this, everybody pays taxes. I'm a man that pays a lot of taxes.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
But you know what? Everybody's going to pay the tax if it goes the other way. It's because the consumer tax, which everybody has to pay.
Is that a bad tax? Huh? Is it a bad tax they're going to?
How do you feel like it is? Do you feel it's a bad? Okay, well, so we came to a thing here. Was it Mo's here on Friday night? It was called, Americans for Prosperity put it on.
Okay.
It was put on by them, but it was called Zero Income Tax Tour, and it was Senator Ben Brown, Senator Curtis Trent, Representative Bishop Davidson, Representative Ben Keithley, and Representative John Simmons. We're all here Friday night. They were talking about the bill that they're putting forward to try to get rid of state income tax. So I was like, I thought, we want to get rid of it. But then when I got here and they started talking, I was like, wait a minute. Because so I'm thinking, like Bill Eigel, when he was running for governor, talked a lot about cutting property tax. And the way he was going to do that was by getting rid of all the waste. He was going to get rid of waste. He was going to get rid of this and that. And he went through a lot of different things, different waste where we could cut waste and we could make up the money that we wouldn't be getting through the property tax. Well, anyway, they're not doing that. They're going to add a 4.2% service tax on every service and this is the last thing I'll say, and then So what?
Yeah, I was going to say that.
So instead of cutting the waste and kind of they're just I'm thinking that seems not
They usually
good.
don't. They usually don't get rid of a tax.
They
usually just trade where the taxes come from. That's generally how it works. So.
So I'm from Warren County, and we are going to be just letting everybody know, if you're here from Warren County, we are having a like a town hall type meeting with Ben Brown and Jeff Myers on February 13th at 7 o'clock at the Warrenton Library. I think it's at 6:30. 7.
Last I heard in my email was 6:30, but it was 3 weeks ago.
Verify before
Yeah.
you go.
Well, better be early than late.
Well, yeah, I mean, I have 7 o'clock. I'm a committee on the Central Committee for Warren County. That's what I have on my text message. So anyway, February 13th, Warrenton Library, 7 p.m. So come with your questions for Senator Ben Brown and Representative Jeff Myers. Be a good way to talk with them.
All right. If I can, I want to introduce, let me get Ben on because I don't want to get too late. So Ben and I are the ones that are working on Missouri Doge. I think it's the first time anybody's heard your name a part of this, isn't it, Ben? So, and Ben's been around for a long time. I interviewed him when I was at the previous station I was working at. I just think he is the kind of person that he knows the ins and outs. I would consider myself just a rookie with some goals that I want to accomplish. I think he's going to paint he's going to give us the roadmap to get there. Okay, Ben Murphy. Ben Murphy.
Thanks, Rob. Isn't he great? You're looking at a leader, and I identified Rob as a leader when I first heard him talking on the other station. I've worked in politics for, 53 years. My wife of 48 years is here with me tonight, Betsy. And you can't be in this game that long unless you've got that kind of support, and I have it. That's why she was important for her to be here tonight. So, 53 years in politics. My first political campaign was with an organization called CREEP. Does everybody remember CREEP? That was the Committee to Re-elect the President. It was 1972. I was 14 years old. I licked stamps and stuffed envelopes for Richard Nixon's re-election at 14 years old in the Republican Party. That was 1972. I've worked in politics ever since, locally, mostly in St. Louis County, the state of Missouri. I'm a former police commissioner in Chesterfield. I've been elected. I've been appointed. I've run campaigns. I've worked campaigns. I've knocked on doors. When the Republican Party didn't want to have anything to do with Donald Trump in 2016, I organized with grassroots people I knew, and we ran a parallel campaign for Donald Trump. We opened the first Trump office in the country. Some of you might remember it was at 141 and 64. We were recognized by Trump. I could talk about myself and my political stories all night, couldn't I, Betsy? Yes. Well, those two ladies are dear friends of mine. You're talking about Diane Neff and Annette Reed.
I went up there and they were building it with they started off with free, they took, what do you call it, pallets, free pallets.
I built those.
They took them apart.
I know. I know. I built it, and I disassembled it right before COVID because of COVID. And anyway, that's one of my stories. It's a beauty. You'd love it. But I'm standing here today because I've done this my whole life. And I was taught this game, and I call it a game, by my heroes. And those heroes were some people you know. Phyllis Schlafly, Jack Bruner. Jack is the father of John Bruner, who you may know, who ran for governor. He ran for the Senate. And a dear friend and mentor, Don Griffin. Does anybody know Don Griffin? Decent guy, Don Griffin, on the radio, on Chuck Norman's station, Don Griffin. Don became executive director of the National John Birch Society. He's no, all three of those people are no longer with us. And they taught me this game. Phyllis said to me, after as a young man, one of my first wins was in the Buchanan campaign. Jack Bruner, Phyllis Schlafly, myself, Don Griffin, John Moore of Crawford County. Do you know John Moore? Anybody know John Moore? I've worked with John for almost my whole life. We ran the Buchanan campaign. John was a militia leader then, and the militia was part of that, the Missouri militia, before it was disassembled on the Oklahoma City bombing and discredited militias across the country, and they became persona non grata. They're coming back, and John will tell you that they're still around, but you just don't know who they are. John's on satellite radio, and he has been for over 20 years now, and he's a close, dear friend and advisor to me to this day. So, like I said, I'm watching the clock because it's 7 o'clock, and I want to be prompt, and I want to make sure everybody's out of here so that we're not turning into one of those meetings that drag on forever. And I want to get to talking about Doge, but I want you to understand a little bit about me, because I had a conversation. I was on the radio station with Robb when he was at the other station, because I was pretty fired up. I worked with the Central Committee in St. Louis County. I work against him mostly. But when I first heard Robb, and I was Jamie's guy, Jamie Allman on 97.1, and Jamie was the voice of, is that you, Margaret? Hey, Margaret. Hey, all right, Margaret. It's great to see you, hon. I thought I recognized you. Okay, so Jamie, a 14-time local Emmy award-winning broadcaster. That record will never be touched again. But Jamie, I worked with him after they canceled him. We brought him up to MC our Senate, when we had the Senate race and Josh Hawley got elected. Josh was the only one that didn't show up to the Senate forum we funded. But I asked Jamie, who was toxic in the game then, I said, Jamie, you got to MC this, man. And he did, and it kind of brought him back. And anyway, Jamie and I have a long history, and I love him. I was on Jamie's last program at 104.9 when I exposed a fraud going on in the St. Louis County Central Committee, exposing that fraud, and Jamie got fired that day. And he claims, well, they were going to do it anyway eventually. I said, well, timing's everything. But they didn't want me on Monday morning talking about the fraud. And I won't go down that road, because that's another story that we'll talk about maybe someday on the radio when we're going down memory lane. Before I get any further, and I'm watching the clock, and I know my wife is watching me, aren't you? We're going to talk about Doge. I want everybody to understand. Doge is, we're building the foundation. Any organization has to have a rock solid foundation. Do we agree? Oh, I'm going to talk about, you're the Tea Party question? Well, I'm going to get to that one, but let me get there. I'll get there, I promise you. I've got less than 20 minutes. I got less than, well, I could go over, but I'm going to walk off here at 7. Does it say 7:15 on the flyer? Betsy, I got another 15 minutes. Oh, you want to go? We're going to go. But I really want you to understand, Robb and I are, you know what? We only found out on the way here that we're both Rittner boys. And I'm married up. I married a Parkway girl. So I'm married up, man. I want to thank the people of Franklin County. Do you know why I'm thanking you? You have no idea, I'll bet. Is Roger Jackson here out there that I don't recognize him? I don't think he's here. Do y'all know Roger Jackson? Is he one of us? Some people might not think so. I'm going to tell you what Roger Jackson did. So St. Louis County is the engine of the 2nd Congressional District, right? We are. And Franklin County's got a piece of the 2nd Congressional District, not your whole county. How many congressional districts overlap Franklin County? Excuse me? You guys are completely in the 2nd Congressional District? I thought I knew everything. Thank you. So yeah. Okay, thank you for clarifying that. Yeah. Well, the only person that's ever beat Ann in a competition, political competition, a race is me, and I did it twice. And those 2 wins against Ann bookended my political career. So Jack Bruner and myself and Phyllis organizing for Buchanan in 1996, we defeated Ann Wagner's Dole bunch by electing all the delegates from the 2nd Congressional District to the National Convention for Patrick Buchanan. Ann was so mad, she was a committee woman, and she was so mad she tried to grab, well, first you take the chair. So we threw her off the chair, well, we threw her, off, we threw her off the chair. She was going to, be the chairman of the convention, but we had her outnumbered. We swamped them. And we outnumbered her, and we threw her off the chair. We voted all of our people in with no mercy. We took all the delegates. We didn't do proportional. We went winner take all was one of the strategies we used, and we crushed them. That was the first win against Ann. The second win against Ann is why I'm thanking Jackson County. So Roger Jackson, Franklin County, I've got early stages of CRS. So Franklin County was part of a strategy that was developed by a man named Gary Wiegert. Gary, myself, Niles Steffens, you'll be hearing more about Niles Steffens, I'm sure. He's a rising star. He's one of us. The 3 of us organized across the 2nd Congressional District, across all the counties in the 2nd Congressional District. St. Louis County, St. Charles County, Franklin County, and I think we got a piece of Warren County, right? Warren County? Who's my Warren County person? Warren County? So thank you to the Warren County, because what we did was, for the first time, the engine of the 2nd Congressional District, St. Louis County, the strategy was to bring together a coalition of like-minded people who were motivated. And so Gary coordinated and unified the 3 stepchild counties along with St. Louis County, and together we showed up with such force at the caucus that was held at Parkway West High School, which is where we won, and we won. We unseated the 2nd Congressional Chairman, Mark Harder. We took him off the chair with our votes. We elected our chairman, Gary Wiegert. Gary ran the convention, and we did cut a deal with all the delegates. I call them the other side. Thank you. The other side was the establishment. They were led by the likes of Mark Harder, the St. Louis County Central Committee, Ann Wagner was there, if you were there. I'll say more about that. And we won. Ann Wagner was booed at that caucus. And I didn't. Yes, she was there. So Ann Wagner was booed. Well, she got out of there pretty quick. No, let me rephrase. Ann was not at the caucus. Ann showed up at the convention. Two different things. And this process is very complex, and it's done so on purpose to keep we the people from being able to do what we did. Okay? So and I went up to Ann at that convention, and I had my Pat Buchanan button on that I handmade in '96. And she walks up, and she knows me well, and she looked at the button, and she's got this scowl on her face. I got a picture of her scowling at the button. And she looked at me, and I said, Ann, I'm the only guy that's ever beat you in an election, and now I've done it twice. So that happened, and that's a badge of honor I wear. And the people that I mentioned, Phyllis, Jack Bruner, Don Griffin, those people had an idea to do what Robb and I will do. That idea was an organization that I helped found called, I'm sure some of you know about it, some of you may be members, the Missouri Republican Assembly. Does anybody know the Missouri Republican Assembly? Heard about it. Okay, the idea was to form an organization that would stretch across the state in every county that would be comprised of Republicans that believed in the Republican platform. That was they brought it out of California, and Jack and Phyllis wanted to organize it here, and my name was on that founding document. And it's really strong down in the 7th Congressional District to this day. Those people they're wonderful people. But like any organization, the foundation just wasn't quite strong enough for multiple reasons, mostly for funding. So that's always been a problem, why these organizations come and go. Regarding the taxpayer, U.S. taxpayer, or the taxpayers, I was also a founder in Missouri of what we called back then the Constitution Party. That was that's how I figured out that the third party movement was cool, but it's not going to work, not under a two-party system. They call it the Constitution Party today. I think they still have some ballot access. I was a founder of that. I've been doing this my whole life. But and just in the last months, it came to me when I knew that this type of organization, this type of movement, which this is becoming a movement clearly, with Robb at the helm, I can identify a leader. I know one when I see one. I saw it in Pat Buchanan. I saw it in Donald Trump. And I see it in Robb, not as a politician, but somebody who can be the face and the leader of an organization. He's got a microphone. That's always important. But Robb is going to do this with the help of all of us. This will be different. We're going to be ground up, from the ground up. The Republican Party is run top down by the RNC. They tell the local faction of that criminal organization what to do. It's run like the mafia. There's 50 families in this mafia. Okay? That's how it's run. So the idea is, for once, with the technology we have, it's in your hands, every one of you's. With the technology we have, we can organize across this entire state, in every county, with the technology. With the press of a button, you can know everything you need to know about who your entire chain of command, if you will, in your Republican Party. You can know it entirely from bottom to the top, with the exception of who? When you press that button on that state site where you can find out who all your people are, who do they exclude? Central committees. You don't know who your committee people are. And when you do finally get to know them and you want to get in that game, I hear the laughter. I know, I live it, I'm telling you. So I'm the guy in my central committee. When Catherine Pinner backed out to lead our ticket for county executive, and she backed out, the deal was the central committee gets to choose somebody. I'd been down that road. I was a candidate in '98 for county executive in the primary. So the central committee is going to choose the candidate. How are we going to do it? Renee Artman? Well, we're going to take resumes and have speeches and we'll vote. And I thought, well, you know, no Republican wants to run in that race because they don't believe they can win, number one, and maybe they can't. They've quit trying, really. I'll tell you how bad it is. So my name goes in the hat, and the fix was in. From the start, I saw it coming, and that's okay, because I've used it against them ever since, and that's one of the reasons we removed Mark Harder. Mark Harder led the effort to install, well, I went up against a Democrat, a guy by the name of Mark Mantovani. Mark was a two-time loser in the Democrat primary to unseat Sam Page, and he was never successful. But now these brilliant Republicans running our Central Committee figures, hey, let's get a Democrat to do it. So I go to the night of the rigged election. Anybody who was a faithful Republican were too embarrassed to even show up for the vote because it wouldn't matter. They were going to have a secret vote, of course, just in case. You know, there was going to be a secret vote. So we show up, and I was there was a third guy, and he was just in there because I think they wanted to have three. I don't know, whatever. Nobody ever heard of him, and so there's three of us. Mark was the first speaker, and I was the second speaker, and I wasn't quite on my game that night. Not that I may ever be, but that night I didn't get through my speech. Can you imagine, long-winded? I couldn't get through I think they gave us 2 or 3 minutes to get through a speech. And then it was question and answer time. So I think I don't remember, Mark might have got the first question and answers, and the question was like, well, if you're a county executive and all these technical questions and everything, so I get up to give my question and answer, and whatever the first question was, I totally didn't care what it was. I started telling the people that you can't win unless first you think you can win, and what you people are about to do is put a two-time loser Democrat to lead the Republican ticket, and you expect that's going to win? This guy is a pro-abort. He hates Trump. He's lost against Sam Page twice. What are you thinking? Well, what they was thinking was some brilliant political strategist who runs a political, the guys you hire to run your campaign, you know, that knew that Mantovani had a bunch of money. They're going to make some money off of him and get him to run because, you know, the Republican's not going to get elected anyway, so we may as well pull this stunt, if you will. And so I lost the election. Darn. I knew it was going to happen. It didn't feel good. It never feels good to lose an election, but to lose with the devotion I've had to the Republican principles, I won't say the party, but the devotion I've had to the Republican principles my whole life, constitutional principles, and the people in the St. Louis County Central Committee voted for a Republican to lead, or a Democrat to lead the ticket against me. I thought I was done. I thought I was done until I recognized a leader like Robb Carter, and I thought, well, you know what? I've got an idea. I've got an idea to develop an organization on solid foundation using technology to unify for the first time all the grassroots individuals of Missouri, along with, very important, along with all the grassroots organizations as a team to do the things that Rob's talking about, to pressure the politicians. Now, you know, if you've been around grassroots organizations, there's a leader. He's usually very charismatic, very well-meaning, There's so many egos in this business, and they're very protective of their group. And working with other groups, especially other grassroots organizations, that's not going to be easy, but they're not going to have a choice, because they'll either work with us or they're not going to be involved in the greatest grassroots movement this state, I promise you, has ever seen. With technology, this organization, I dare to say it, but because I don't want it to be taken the wrong way, we're going to develop a parallel central committee system to shine the light locally on these central committees, because they say, Phyllis used to say, all politics is local, Ben, work in local politics. So that's where I spent a lot of time in Chesterfield working in local politics. She's right. She's absolutely right, because that's where the power is. That's where most of us are, is in our townships. So this grassroots organization will have representatives. We're going to start with 8 congressional districts. That's what we've got. There will be a congressional district organizer who will focus on his townships. He or she will get the townships involved. And you know who's going to flock to this organization? The people that realize, who have worked with the Republican Central Committees, that know that they're nothing but a breeding ground for politicians who can toe the line. If you don't toe the line, even at that Central Committee position, you're going nowhere, I promise you. And if you've lived it, and there's a lot of us out there that have lived that, a lot, and there are people that have lived that who are sincere and should be politicians, and coming from the ground up, mentored up through that system, but they never get a chance, because if you're a guy like me and you want to represent your township at the Central Committee, and you go in talking about issues like we've talked about tonight, you're the enemy, and they'll work against you. If you've worked in these Central Committees, you know what I'm talking about. You know exactly what I'm talking about. Do you have a caucus of like-minded? How do you control your Central Committee? Your like-minded people do, or are you a minority? I think there's a division. Well, there's a division in most of them. Okay, so we ran a slate of like-mindeds to take over our Central Committee, and we had 12 candidates. We elected 7, I think, or 8, and we're in the minority. But the ones that we elected, Gary Wiegert, Niall Steffens is there, Jeff Jacks, the guy he unseated a 20-some-year committeeman who was a former chairman of the St. Louis County Central Committee. Jeff's on fire up there in North County. In Blue North County, he's on fire. He's the guy who got 40 people at a meeting in the snow Robb talked about. That can be done if people are motivated. So I'm looking at the clock. I got a few minutes left. Missouri Doge. Missouri Doge is just a brand. And you know why it's called Missouri Doge? Because the Doge brothers, and that's all over the news. And when we put our press releases out, we'll get press, we'll get recognized. That's going to happen. The funding for this operation, that's the other reason businesses fail and organizations fail, is because of funding. So businesses come in and start their game. How many businesses have I started, my darling? I'm a serial entrepreneur. One of the most successful business we've started is our tour business. We run custom tours and travel. Betsy works it day and night. The calls come in at night. She answers the phone. I get to do the books and the website and do politics, because she's enabled me for 48 of those years to be able to do what I do by running our business from the home and raising our kids. I have 2 children. I have 2 grandchildren. So Missouri Doge is initially funded, if you will, by a few bucks in my pocket, putting up a website. I had some of the first websites in St. Louis to include the first political website in a county executive race in St. Louis County. I'm an early adopter in a lot of things. So websites were one of them, so I did the website, and I've organized before. I've got a history of organizing. I know how this works, and I believe this concept will work with the technology. I talked to the regional director of the John Birch Society today. He said, Ben, I've been wanting to talk to you. I said, well, you know, I've been a member for ever how many years, since the 90s anyway. He said, you know, I wanted to talk to you about our bulletins, and we used to call them trim sheets. I don't remember what the acronym was even for, but it would be your local representatives, congresspeople then, voting record, and it was on paper. And we would go door to door and say, do you know what your congressman's voting for? Here's his trim sheet. Listed all the issues he voted for, and the John Birch Society would score it. Well, today, you can look up people like, the one I looked up was this character named Ben Baker. Not Ben Brown, Ben Baker. Because Ben Baker was appointed by the governor to head up a committee called the Committee of Government Efficiency, COGE. You see what they're doing there with the branding? So he gets on social media and he starts a X site. Do we still say formerly Twitter? Can we get over that? So he puts out an X site in November called Missouri Doge. When I got back from Florida in January with this idea, I got on X and I put in Missouri Doge. I'm going to start the X site. And I'm like, you got to be kidding me. Who is this guy? So I did a variation of the name, launched it, got the domain name. We've got .com and .org. So if you accidentally do .com, it'll pop to .org and you'll see us. And so we got that launched. And you're going to hear more about Ben Baker because he's not properly using the Missouri seal, the seal of Missouri. He's not properly using it. And you put that in your back pocket right now because I can't make a federal case out of it yet. But he's fooling the people. They changed the handle on Missouri Doge. It was at MoDoge. You know what they changed it to after they saw what I did? At Missouri Doge Official. It's not official. He's the Committee of Government Efficiency. There's nothing official about his X site. I wonder if the state of Missouri knows he's doing that. We'll fight that battle when we get to it. So the way this organization will be built in the funding, I believe, is going to outlast me. It's going to be my legacy. This is my swan song. But does anybody know about Bitcoin? Anybody know about Bitcoin? I was an early adopter in a lot of things, to include Bitcoin. And does everybody like to end the Fed, audit the Fed? We know about all that, know about funny money and the printing of money illegally. I don't know, I'm not getting a good vibe off of that. So, I was an early adopter in Bitcoin. Buck the Fed. All right? So, I won't get into the weeds on this one, but as fiat currencies, this is where my economics background and research comes in handy. As every fiat system comes to an end, and they all do, all 400 of them over the last 1,000 years or whatever it is, they all come to an end. They come to the end because the government steals from us by debasing our currency. As they come to an end, they create a parallel system that runs parallel until it's completely destroyed, and they jump onto the new rails, the new system. So when the rails of our dollar, backed by gold, was coming to its end in 1972, as we all know, when Nixon closed the gold window. What did they do? The new rail was already built in a deal, and they called it the petrodollar. So the petrodollar, oil, with the help of Saudi Arabia, has enabled us to sustain the United States of America at the point of a gun. Does everybody know what happened last year with the petrodollar? Saudi Arabia did not renew the agreement. Saudi Arabia buys zero of our debt. I don't think any of the world buys our debt. There's this incestuous thing going on where the Treasury is buying our debt. The Federal Reserve, let's see how this works. The Federal Reserve issues the currency by issuing T-bills to back it. That Saudi used to buy all of them, and now the Treasury is so. It's about done, folks. We're getting there. The new system, I believe, will be the rails will be Bitcoin, and that's a rabbit hole. I could speak about it. I've studied it for years. I was an early adopter. I run part of the Bitcoin network with a Bitcoin node. I mined Bitcoin back in the day. I wish I would have really understand it as well as I do now, as back when I was mining Bitcoin, when it was $1 or 10 cents or whatever it was. So I'll cut into the chase. I got 5 minutes. I'm watching that clock. So Bitcoin, when we do start taking donations, Missouri Doge is formed under the Federal Election Commission laws as a federal hybrid super PAC. The first one I formed was the one I used to run the Trump office. That's how we funded it. And we had big donors and all that, and Tim Drury was a big donor, a great guy, and more a rah-rah Republican Party kind of guy, and that's okay. And we sold Trump merchandise, and we did all kind of crazy things, but COVID came, money dried up, tossed Tim the keys to it was his real estate, and closed it up, and we did COVID, right? That's how that ended. When the money runs out, money is how we run this world, whether it's a gold-backed dollar, whether it's a petrodollar, or whether it's going to be a Bitcoin-backed dollar. The proof that that's happening is specifically in the last 13 months. 3 things had to happen. First, they had to have fair value accounting of Bitcoin if it's to be held by corporations in their treasuries. So it's fairly complex, but that did happen. The second thing that had to happen was Wall Street had to come in. Okay, it's the way the world works, folks. So Wall Street comes in and develops ETFs, ETFs, Bitcoin ETFs. They did that a year ago. The last thing that had to happen was a rule, and I'll file this probably. The banks have had a rule that they can't domicile that for individuals. They can't hold it on their books. FASB 121 was repealed less than 10 days ago. And when that happened, that means your bank will soon, I promise you, tell you that, hey, this Bitcoin's all right. You can bring it here and we'll domicile it for you. We'll have it in an account, just like your dollars that are, fast becoming worthless. And we'll put the Bitcoin in your account for you. We'll account for it. It'll be safe. It's hard to understand how Bitcoin worked, to self-custody and create it. And, it's cryptographers invented it. Supposedly a guy named Satoshi Nakamoto. Well, that man didn't exist. He was a very wise, very brilliant cryptographer. And he got with a guy named Hal Finney, and they perfected the code. It's the most beautiful invention that I've ever seen, because I can send anybody in this room any amount of money in Bitcoin that I have in my cell phone, my smart device, my computer, I can send it to you in a blink of an eye, a press of a button. And there's no friction. That means nobody can get a piece of that. You try to send a lot of money across the country or across the world, you know how long it takes to get that done and what that costs to send $1 million or $1 billion to Asia? It costs a small fortune to do that transaction-wise. Bitcoin, there's no friction. It's pennies. So poor people working in this country trying to send $100 back to their people in Mexico, when Western Union's going to hit them for 10% or whatever that number is, they can do it for 10 cents or whatever, something ridiculous cheap. That's the technology that exists in this code. That code is designed to run for another 120 years. So Satoshi disappears. He left 1.1, I believe, million Bitcoin in his virtual wallet, that we call them. It's recorded on the blockchain. You've heard that technology. Blockchain technology is already taking over. We'll run elections maybe someday on the blockchain because it's beautiful. So when we do start taking donations, the way I've designed this, and I believe it will work, is that every dollar you donate, a portion of it's going to go into Bitcoin. I'm thinking 20%. What happens when you do that, that Bitcoin will be accounted for in a separate account that will be tagged to you. Part of the agreement on that donation is that Bitcoin must be held for 10 years. It'll start being returned to you maybe 10% a year till you've got it all back. So that's a 20-year horizon. So I'm building this to last for 20 years. Why do I think that can happen? Bitcoin, when I first got involved, was about a dime. And I watched it go to $100,000. Every 4 years, Bitcoin's creation of Bitcoin is cut in half. So instead of inflation, it's built-in deflationary creation of a unit of measure, a medium of exchange, and a store of value. That's what money is. It used to be seashells. It used to be cotton bales or tobacco bales or whatever. Now it's digits on a computer. Everything is being digitized. Music was digitized. That network went from vinyl to iPods, and we listen to music on satellite radio, digitized. Music's digitized. Documents are everything's digitized. Your money really isn't digitized. That system is still being run like it was designed 50 years ago with checks, and they got to clear, and somebody's got to look at it, and the computer might scan it, and you got a credit card, but Bitcoin's different. The blockchain's different. It's what's happening. So, every dollar that may get donated to this, to include the large donors, 20% of that's going to be in a separate account, if you will, all very transparent. This super PAC that I've developed is incorporated for liability purposes. Nobody wants to, get sued and take your house away. So, Missouri Doge PAC, Inc., incorporated in Wyoming, based in Chesterfield, Missouri. So no, we're not asking for money. We've got money to get this thing up and running. It'll have legs because the money you donate is not just for the operation, but it's for your children's operation of this organization and your grandchildren's operation of this organization. Because this organization was Jack Bruner, Phyllis Schlafly, and Don Griffin's vision. They just didn't have the technology or the funding that would have the legs. The Tea Party was a great movement. I was asked to form it with Bill Hennessy and John Loudon, and if some of you know those folks. They were the Midwest founders of the Tea Party. That was about the year, what year was it? Tea Party founded. 10, 9 or 10? I'm trying to think if I was just getting sober or whatever. So I'm 16 years sober. And thank goodness. And I don't know how she put up with me those years, but she did. And is that you, Judy? Oh, I thought I recognized somebody. I'm sorry. Anyway, so in a nutshell, I'm over my time. I apologize. What I need everybody in this room to do, you've got the paper that says our X account and our website. If you haven't done it, please drop you're not going to be spammed. We're not going to sell your data. Drop your name on the website in the little box with your email and whatever else it asks. Tell us how you want to help, because this is going to be volunteer driven. That's how we ran the Trump organization in Missouri and did an end run around the Missouri GOP. They hate my guts, and I wear it like a badge of honor. But this is all going to be data driven and technology driven. And Robb will be explaining. I'll probably be doing a lot of talking on the radio with Robb, further explaining this as we move along. But this is the first public information dissemination of Missouri Doge was tonight. So tonight's historic. And when you live history, you don't know it until later. I've lived 53 years of history that's amazing. The stories, I'm writing my book and all that business, for posterity. But Missouri Doge, please go to the X account. If you don't have Twitter X, get it on your app. And if you do anything with it, get your account on X. It's free. And follow at Missouri Doge and go to the website, sign up. As we build those numbers, that's how you do this. You run your numbers up because people want to be involved with a movement. People want to be involved with something that's successful. And this is a movement. Robb's the leader. Take your cues from Robb on the radio because he's the best he's better than Jamie. I love Jamie. But Jamie's no Robb Carter. He's amazing. I recognize it. I'm following his lead. I'm giving him, he's a co-founder with me in Missouri Doge. And together, we're going to make history. And thank you for coming tonight again. I don't know if I want to take a bunch of questions and get in the weeds, folks, but if it's real bare bones, otherwise, listen to Robb. Follow us on X and the website. If you can help, volunteer. If you've got some skills, let us know on the website. And, we'll see where this thing goes, but it's going to go, I promise you.